Brilliant. Right, I've got one last question, and it's all about saving money. So, we talk to clients, and John, I'll come to you first on this, but I want Jane and Steve in on this as well. But when it comes to using things like salary sacrifice, I know pensions is the big one, but there are others as well. But, how can employers save money for themselves as well as for their employees? So tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So, I mean, the simple answer on this one is salary sacrifice works on the basis that it reduces the actual salary being paid, which therefore reduces national insurance that's paid. That's both in terms of employees and employers. So in simple terms, by offering a salary sacrifice scheme, then you'll save the amount of money that you're having to pay to the government in terms of national insurance. So that's attractive in itself. The biggest dilemma with regard to this is lots of people are scared of salary sacrifice. If you say to somebody, would you like to be paid less money? They can say, no, of course I wouldn't. And that's what salary sacrifice sounds like to be. I'm going to give away some of my salary. Well, that's a bad thing. But actually it's not. If you understand it, it's a really good thing to do from an employee point of view. It can give loads of additional benefits, more access to child benefit or childcare in particular by reducing tax codes, which generally tax brackets, which generally work on that. But in simple terms, it's a reduction in national insurance, which means more of the money is actually going into both people's pockets rather than going off to pay tax to the government. Now, I happen to be a fan of paying tax to the government because that gives us more wider benefits, but let's worry about ourselves first and then that bit later. But, in simple terms, if we can educate more people on that and get more people taking advantage of salary sacrifice, it's wins on both sides. But I often hear employers talk about really low take up when it comes to salary sacrifice because the employee doesn't understand it. And a lot of the time the employer doesn't either, or at least the people within the employment delivering the conversation about salary sacrifice don't sell it.
Interesting. So why wouldn't an employer then? So is it just they just don't understand it, or they think it's too complex? Ryan's just there about SMEs, for example, who may have not implemented salary sacrifice even for pensions. So why don't people?
So I think there's a nervousness around that. There are a couple of potential downsides with regard to salary sacrifice from an employee point of view. So having a lower salary potentially can impact your ability to borrow money, particularly around mortgages. Although more and more mortgage companies now understand how salary sacrifice work and instead look at affordability rather than just your gross salary.
Yeah.
But there is a worry, I think, that it's going towards that place of financial advice, and that's somewhere that I don't want to go, and that danger that just hearing that noise that it can have negative implications for people is enough for people to run away scared. So I do think that's a genuine reason. I don't think it is very complicated, but it's just something we don't talk about on a day-to-day basis. So
I think you're right. It is the scary part, isn't it? It's the moment you mention tax, your CFO, your finance director, can't do that. And actually, it's not. Yes, it is tax, but salary sacrifice is not an HMRC matter to a certain extent. To have salary sacrifice is a change of employment terms and conditions, and it's I'm not probably doing it make it sound too simple, but it's as simple as a variation to contract to say I agree to take less salary if you put this into the pension for me instead.
Absolutely.
And it really is that simple. And on the mortgage part, I was at a very large employer when salary sacrifice really took off, and all we did was decided that when we sent out mortgage reference letters that we would put the contracted notional salary, and not an issue at all. Good luck to anyone trying to get a mortgage these days, but actually that's so common. But yes, I think you're right, people do get in a bit of a tiz about it, but it's an employment thing rather than a tax thing, and the savings are quite monumental. I think I would always recommend it. And I've also worked on some projects where we've essentially gone through like a mini consultation and said to people, we're going to opt you in unless you tell us by this date that you'd like to be opted out, in a kind of contractual change. And that's really helped people, and run the workshops and explain things, and do the one-to-ones and point them in the right direction so that they understand it. But also, before I forget, on the side, we can go back to salary sacrifice, because people probably want to talk about it a lot. And from the point of view of saving money so that you can afford some financial education, a very quick reward review. Just look at the benefits which you currently have out there, because actually you'll be surprised about the stuff that you're paying for twice. So if you have a pension or life assurance or PMI or some kind of product like that, chances are you probably have an employee assistance program sitting with it that you don't use because you're paying for it separately. If you have a discounts platform, and you're paying an additional amount for maybe car schemes or gym discounts or that kind of thing, you're paying for it twice, because actually there are products out there. So 2 or 3 days doing a really thorough reward review can uncover all of those things that you thought that you never knew you had. And also, I'm not sure I should say this, Steve might tell me off this, when you do go for renewal with your providers and with your suppliers, push them to provide something else that you want. These are people, it's a competitive industry. If you want something over and above what they're currently offering as an employer, which would fill a gap in your provision, it could be, can we have discounted access to an AAP? Ask for it. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, interesting. I like that.
I wouldn't beat you up for that at all. I completely concur. The amazing thing is, many of these products increasingly have got so many added value features that the insurer has invested heavily in. They are really good quality features. The insurer kind of tells the intermediary completely fails to tell the employer. And the reality is no one knows it's there. So no one's getting any value out of it at all. So always look to sort of uncover all the bits and bobs and bits within the contracts you've got. Again, look for the duplications. And one just quick risk warning, just so we don't make it all sound too great. Salary sacrifice, the one thing you can't do, guys, is reduce someone's salary below the national living levels, national living wage, national minimum wage. So that can be a genuine blocker for some companies. But for the vast majority of employers, bluntly, and I've said this for many years, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you want to do it?
And I know this is a bit of a political question, but David has asked it into the chat. Do we see the current government did talk about closing down salary sacrifice arrangements for all but pension schemes? What do we think might happen, or will it happen? Who knows, I guess. Go on, Steve, have you got a view on that?
Always got a view on this one. Always got a view on this one. The bottom line is pension tax release, forget about salary sacrifice for a second, cost the government a massive, and genuinely massive amount of money each and every year. So I think something between 30 and 60 billion pounds goes into pension tax relief every single year. And you compare that to, say, HS2 costs, and it just shows you that HS2 was actually quite cheap, relatively speaking. So pension tax reliefs cost a lot. The economy is, let's be honest, fairly broken at the moment. Whoever comes into power at the next election, it doesn't really matter whether it's continuation, the Conservatives, the Coalition, Labour, or whatever, are going to have to make some hard decisions. But the bottom line, the rule of thumb with this stuff is make hay while the sun shines. While you've got tax release, while you've got salary sacrifice, and they're talking about getting rid of national insurance at the moment, incidentally, but that's another conversation. While you've got these things in place, while you can avoid them and get more money into your pension, or indeed other benefits,
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. I think whoever comes in as next government's got a lot of stuff on the list, and actually pension tax relief, if you're going to get rid of pension tax relief, and they could still do it, there's a whole lot more that you need to do with the social economy in this country to make up for it. State pension, minimum earnings, that all kind of thing, to make it work, because otherwise what you are doing is basically having a whole generation, or next 2 or 3 generations, of very, very, very poor pensioners, because no one will be saving. So I don't think it's something which is imminent, but there will always be wiggles and changes. What I would say is that there are some organisations out there, suppliers out there, who are using the word salary sacrifice for benefits which are not true salary sacrifice benefits. And I think that beyond, you know, your standard EV cars, pensions, bikes, if anything else comes along, then do take a look at it, because there have been things which have come and gone. But yeah, the pension one at the moment, I think certainly until they've sorted out all of the other problems, is fine. And I like to think of the amount of tax that's not paid on pensions as being equivalent to a COVID app. So that kind of puts it into perspective, doesn't it? We got a year's worth of pensions for the price of a COVID app, but at least the pensions will do some good.
Excellent. Right, we've covered a load of stuff there, so thank you so much, guys. Just a few bits to wrap up on. It's worth mentioning, and Ryan's just popped it in the chat there, about, you know, managers and leaders, you know, big businesses or SMEs, you know, we have to carry a lot of hats, right? And benefits and reward is one of those hats. So, you know, we've got to be upskilling our leaders and managers as well to help in this space, and not just employees. So I think that's a really good point to make at any point as well. We are also offering discount on FinWell Lite. So for anyone that's thinking about starting their financial education and financial well-being support in the workplace, this is a subscription package to get you started with giving you access to educated, trusted content, as well as access to 12 online group workshops throughout the year on a variety of different money-related subjects, as well as some of our recording.